once again, welcome to another edition of the Shirlma Show. I know you'll be wondering, who is the guest today? Guess what? We have Mr. MAZU Collins today in the house. Mr. MAZU is a fellow with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, and he is a lead consultant with Africa Finance Services. Welcome to the Shirlma Show, Mr. MAZU.
Thank you very much for having me, Shirley. I would say finally.
Honestly. But you know, I always say this and I'll still say it again. Thank you. I owe you a lot for my career today. I will say this again severally because I really appreciated what you actually gave me. By then, you used to call Africa Finance Service was 2545 Business Consultancy.
Yeah.
Because I remember you not knowing me, and actually, we just spoke on the phone. You sent a laptop, and you were the first boss that I knew could actually give me dressing allowance. Like, that was actually something very remarkable. Since then, I've never had it again. So thank you.
Well,
So,
can't remember the details.
no, that was really amazing. And one thing that I really appreciated about you was actually your leadership style. The fact that you always made us feel free with you. Even though we're actually your subordinates, but nobody will actually recognize that when we go out. So how did you actually succeed to go about that?
I think that's the same way of operation today. It comes, I think, the field we find ourselves in. If you think of it, you're a consultant, you have to go talk to a client. The client wants to see a team that does well. The client does not want to see maybe a senior that does well, and then maybe a junior that comes and doesn't do well. Because at the end of the day, we're selling one package to the client. So I think if you run a consulting business, if you're going to pitch something to a client or service a client, I think everybody in the team has to be, on par. We have to be together. We have to feel free. Otherwise, if you can't feel free with your colleagues in the office, then how are you going to do when you get in front of a client? So I think that's what has driven, I think, my working approach or my working style.
So, but another thing that it really actually, when I started working with you, by then you were still working, right, in Congo.
Yes, correct.
And when you were telling me, oh, I'm going to leave, I was wondering, like, I can imagine how much my boss is earning, and will he just leave all of that and actually come back to Cameroon? And you did it. So, but my question today will be, what did you actually take into consideration before leaving your job?
Just like many years ago. Okay. But I think the one thing is, if you are passionate about something, I think you're doing a similar thing today with the Shirlma Show. I don't know the details, but I think that it's quite a huge investment that you're putting in. And I think it's because you love what you're doing, or you have some sort of a vision, and you're doing everything to ensure that you achieve that vision. I think back then, I think definitely there were some errors, there were some mistakes, but I think before you leave your job, you probably think about it like 2-3 years in advance. You try to put some things into place to ensure that, okay, I'm taking this leap. There's a comfort zone that comes with a job, the regular salary. But then you have to do some sort of a planning. I think in my case, I thought to myself, okay, if I save up some money for the next 1 year, and then I get into this adventure or this risk, and at the time I thought I was still young, I thought, okay, even if I don't make it, probably I still have maybe a few years to get back to the job market. So there are many things that goes through your head, but I think at the time it was really driven by passion.
Wow.
I think, yeah. So.
I like the way you put it, right? But another thing is that generally, when people actually want to leave their jobs, they always feel like, oh, everything that my boss used to do that didn't work, or maybe that I didn't like, I'm going to make them right with my own entity. Are there some things that you actually thought were wrong with your boss that you thought you were going to make them right?
Well, not really. I was working, just to remind what I was doing before, I was working in the mining company. So what I left the company to go do 2 different things, So I don't think at any given time thought my boss was doing anything wrong and I was going to change in my new line of business. I had worked in audit before working with the mining company. And while working with the mining company, I think during meetings, during travels, I had this observation that accounting was not practiced well in Africa. And I thought if we improved the way we practice accounting in Africa, it would improve our economies, will develop. So that was the drive behind that. So my boss was not an accountant, so I couldn't think he was doing anything wrong.
So tell us a little bit more about Africa Finance Services.
Well, Africa Finance Services, as you know, it's some sort of it's a new image or a new face from what we had, 2545 Business Consulting. We started off in 2013, I think, you remember? And at the time we were very, we thought, okay, yeah, let's help small businesses get accounting right and all of that, But later on, we noticed that many entrepreneurs, especially the small and medium-sized businesses, they don't even understand what accounting is. They don't see the value of accounting. And then the next issue was even the graduates from university or the accountants working in the market. They were not really, I would say, skilled. And as the years went by, we wanted to kind of focus on one area, accounting, finance, and seeing how we can use that to change the narrative in our economy. 2545 Business Consulting had maybe some kind of, from the name, people didn't kind of pick up what we were doing. Some would say, oh, you are saying that we are limited to 2545 age group. Some would even write, we had a period when a customer or a client wrote out a check and wrote 2445, and then I went to the bank, that's a problem. So we had a lot of issues with that name. So it's okay, fine, let's get a name that represents what we do, and maybe somebody can pick up just from the name what we do. And Africa in that, we've always trying to, I call myself a Pan-Africanist in my own way anyways. So Africa, because we have a couple of clients within the African continent, so we thought Africa Finance Services would be a better way to carry on with the vision that we started with 2545 Business Consulting. So as of now, we do two main things. On the one hand side is education, so we actually believe that Africa needs a financial education revolution because if you think of it, we are rich in Africa. All the countries are rich. If you take Cameroon, they say we are Africa in miniature, but at the same time we are poor. Why? The DRC is my second country, same situation. It's a very rich country, but at the same time it's poor. And I always say that if you think of the developed countries in the world, there's no developed country that does not have a strong accountancy body. And if you think of it, accounting is one of the oldest professions in the world. It's always been there. The stock exchange that you hear in most countries that are developed is actually kind of held together by the accounting profession. So I really believe that if we educate key economic players in our nation about accounting, show them the importance of accounting, get them to invest in accounting, and I think that we will start the journey of growing our nations in Africa. So that's one thing that we do, financial education. And then the other thing we do, it's of course now, if you're educating people about accounting, and then they tell you, okay, fine, how do I get the accounting in my business? So we also help people now with setting up, affordable accounting systems. Because the one thing also is, most of them will say, oh, to have an accounting system is very expensive. I have to buy software, I have to buy. So of course, we now try to see how we can adapt various types of systems for different sizes of businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises.
Why do you think that we as Africans don't necessarily understand the importance of accounting, even though accounting has been existing for a very long time now?
That's a tricky one. I think firstly, we don't have an accountancy body that sets exams. So if you go to a place like South Africa, I studied in South Africa, you hear about SICA, you hear about CASA. If you went to America, you hear about CPA. And you think of it from school, even at university, you start interacting with this institution. And in South Africa, where I studied, let's use South Africa as an example, because I'm talking about my experience here. While in university, SICA is involved in the curriculum. And SICA actually writes books, But if you come to Cameroon, I went to the University of Buea. In my first year of study, we studied with a lecturer from the USA. And he tells us about accounting in America. In my second year, we have a guy from the UK. And the third year now, that's when we start looking at, in the time we studied, we had what we call OCAM, not OADA. And today, I've lectured in many universities as well. The challenge is the same. You have a student that has finished UB for 3 years, and the student is unable to prepare accounts per our OADA standard or OADA principles that exist in Cameroon. So I think it comes from there. The fact that it is absent from the governance structure of the country. And even the government itself, you can see that most of the government institutions are not very accountable. I don't know if you have ever interacted with any council or any SGO's office. Do they publish anything? Do you even know what the budget is? We don't even know what our budget is in the country. We see on TV from time to time the parliament sits and then, okay, it's a news thing. But it ends there. Nobody's accountable to anybody. So I think it's a cultural something that we need to change. And maybe for us to change that, we need to see the importance of it. Okay. I think that's why we're in the education phase. And you have so many businesses and people who start a business, he says, no, I'll get accounting or accounting for my business when I grow.
That's it.
People do say that. But then they forget that accounting plays a key role in growing your business. And you probably never grow if you're waiting for, for your business to grow before you get accounting right. Yeah. So I think it's just one of those things. It's like if you go to a country where, I don't know, ethics is important, it's because maybe the government does. Or there's a lot of key players in the market that kind of promote it. Mm-hmm. And I think in Cameroon, if you drive on any street, you see a church, you see an off license or a bar. But I don't think you see accounting firms, or I don't think you see. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just, it's a cultural thing or maybe from our colonial days, probably. I don't know. But there's that absence of accounting in our market.
So, but Mr. Mazu, there are a lot of chartered accountants now, at least, right? Let me say some of us who even did ACC.
Yeah.
So what do you think we can actually do? If maybe the government is not doing anything, we are also part of the government, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually the people that will constitute the government. Or maybe someday we'll also get, like, let me say, some posts in the government. So what do you think we can actually be doing at our own individual levels to maybe kind of like encourage businesses to actually incorporate accounting from day one?
Yeah, good one. Well, I think from an accountant perspective, I'm a chartered accountant with ACCA, you as well. I think today we have some sort of a platform where ACCA members interact, and I think many people are doing some work. There's also an advisory council for ACCA Cameroon members that is doing some work to kind of brand ACCA and, of course, demonstrate to the market the importance of accounting. I think there are a couple of them also doing lecturing in various universities. So I think there's quite some work already being done. I think of late, Oneka just had a new, chairman, so who is also pushing to have many people registered as chartered accountants. Because definitely if you have more chartered accountants in the market, then it's easier to actually promote accountancy. Because like I said, with the case of SICA, it is the body of members that actually contribute in writing textbooks and creating a curriculum or publishing technical content about accounting in the market. Mm-hmm. But once you don't have, a reasonable group of accountants that are chartered accountants that can work together, then it's a bit difficult. So I think we're getting there. Maybe the pace is slow, but I think we're getting there.
Don't go away. After the break, more with Mr. Mazu Collins. If you're just joining us today on the Shirlma Show, we've been in the company of Mr. Mazu Collins, lead consultant with Africa Finance Services, a fellow with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants UK. So, Mr. Mazu, there are some things that you actually advocate for. I want us to look at one of them, which is actually paying your taxes. Why do you think it's really very important for us to pay our taxes? Because I know from day one, from the first day that I knew you, that was one of the discussions that we had.
Interesting one. It feels like I'm working now for the government. Yeah, but think of it. If you run a business, you want to sell. If you don't sell, there's nothing else in that business. So if we run a country, and if the country has to grow, then there has to be some revenue coming into the country or into the government. And I think, if we all paid our taxes, and if the taxes were well accounted for and used responsibly, then I think that we will not be a poor country anymore. Mm-hmm. So yes, if we, I think that's always been the advocacy that, listen, let's be responsible citizens and let's pay our taxes. But again, saying this to many people might annoy them in Cameroon or in Africa, because I think many people think that the taxes are not used properly. So maybe that's not my I would say my core business today to advocate for taxes. But I think I always say if you run a business, because why that advocacy was there was because many people always shy away from accounting or doing accounting because they think they don't want to pay taxes. So I was always saying, listen, if you budget to do your business, it's like if I want to buy things from Douala and sell in Boya or Limbe, the first thing will be I will think of how much am I going to spend to buy those things. If I'm going to buy an item for 3,000, I want to sell it at least for 5,000. I want to factor my transport coming to Douala and all of that. So it's the same thing. Just take your taxes as if it's one of those things that you need to do to do the business. If you do that, then there's no stress about taxes.
Exactly.
Then you say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to sell this thing for 5,000, if I know I'm going to pay taxes of 300 or 500, I'm going to pay the transport for 1,000, my profit is X. Work from that perspective. Then taxes is not going to be a problem for you. But again, if you just do your business and then at the end of the month or end of the year or end of, I don't know, 3 months, the tax guy comes to you and stresses you up, then you start venting all over the place. Oh, taxes are too high in the country. It means you didn't think about it before. So I think that was more of the message.
And there are even times that you used to make small businesses understand that at the end of the day, you even end up spending more when you even try to kind of like cover up or hide your accounts, something like that.
Definitely. I think I would encourage everybody to do the test for themselves, And I think a lot of times we become victims to this, I think, unscrupulous tax workers. Not all of them are bad. But the thing is that, in Cameroon, we have a word we say motif. When they say motif, it means that once you're actually guilty of a crime, the person that is actually dealing with you can actually exploit you. So you have a lot of people who don't even understand the tax law. So you run a business, and at the end of the month, the tax guy comes and says you're supposed to pay 2 million. Your tax is actually 2 million. And you're panicking because then he has the power to lock up your business or something. And then you end up negotiating with him or her, and you pay maybe at the end of the day 1 million or 100,000 or 700,000, for instance. But then, how much of that money goes back to the state coffers? So I think the key thing is if you want to drive a car, you go to a driving school. You learn how to drive, because you cannot go on the road without knowing how to drive. Even though some people say, oh, you can buy a license. Even if you buy the license, you must at least know how to drive the car, right? So the same thing, if you want to do a business, understand that you're going to have to pay taxes. And understand that you need to know the law for your business to grow. I think that's the advice I would give everybody. Do some investment in knowing the law, at least the tax law in this case.
And actually, I was always keen to learn a lot from you. Okay, one of those things also that you preach a lot is actually you advocate for partnership.
Yep.
Talk to me about that.
Well, let me use a simple example that I think we all use Facebook. I'm not doing marketing for them here, but I'm just using it to illustrate. And there are many people who know about the owner of Facebook, who is, I think, Mark Zuckerberg, right? And I was having a lecture once with, I think, just about 6 months ago, with some master students at the university in Cameroon, and we're talking about this same topic, saying that I was encouraging them to see how they can pull their resources together and do bigger businesses instead of the small businesses. And I gave them 1 or 2 practical examples, and I think Facebook came up. And I said to them, are you aware that Mark Zuckerberg does not own up to 30% of shares in Facebook? And they didn't believe it. And they weren't actually online. Most of them went Googled, and they were like, how? I'm like, yeah, you need to understand that there is no millionaire or there's no billionaire out there that, I think as of today, that starts a business or a small startup, as we call it in Cameroon, and dreams that, I'm going to be a billionaire in 6 years, 7 years. No, it doesn't work like that. And all the big companies you know about, Dell, HP, all those big companies, they are listed on some stock exchange. On the stock exchange, one person does not own a company.
Exactly.
Right? So, and then if you think of the world we live in today, it's a global world. And in those days, maybe you had one Shumenda, at the end of the street. Everybody knew that it was a Shumenda. All the shoes went to him, and he had his business. It was almost like a monopoly, if you think of it. But today, you have a Shumenda that is, or a shoemaker that is in Bamenda in some neighborhood and competes with the business in China, for instance. So it's a global world we live in. People, we're in Cameroon, our sense of quality has been kind of hyped already because we are exposed to the US market and the market out there. So if you produce something locally now, that is not of that international standard. People will not consume it, you know. So it becomes a bit tricky. So, and then it's difficult not to produce standard on a small budget. That's what we call economies of scale. I mean, if you pull people together, it means you've got more brains working on something which is better. You've got, I always say, just think of it. If we came together and 100 of us put in 1 million each, that's 1 million francs CFA. That's how much?
100 million.
It's 100 million, which means that if we were 100 of us, we could build a story building in less than 6 months and use that as a basis to do other businesses. But most of the times, individuals, everybody wants to build a house on savings or on a microfinance loan, which is ridiculously expensive. So I think for us to rebuild the country, we need to start thinking together. We must partner to do big businesses.
You know, I always learn a lot from you, right? So after the break, more with Mr. MAZU Collins. Hello, are you just joining us today on the Shirlma Show? We've been in the company of Mr. MAZU Collins, the lead consultant with Africa Finance Services and a fellow with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants UK. Mr. MAZU,
Yes.
please, we need some advice. Any advice for the youth that are graduating from school and maybe they're actually struggling? Because we talk about not having a lot of startups, but as we're talking before, right, before the interview, we discovered that there are some people that actually just go into business because there are no jobs. They even want to do internships, but there are even no opportunities for them to actually start and maybe carry out internships, right? So what will your advice to this group of individuals be?
It's a tricky one. Well, I mean, I cannot claim that I know everything, but I think my advice will always be, listen, life is we use the word hustle. Life is a hustle. It's like a jungle, you know. I've come across a couple of graduates who don't even have the zeal, don't have the hunger in them. Once you're hungry, I think that you'll make it. And like I always say, in Cameroon, there's this issue of copy work. Everybody wants to copy everything, you know. I think the first thing is if you come from Bamenda or you come from, I don't know, from Boya, come from Yaoundé, your realities are not the same. You know, people come from different backgrounds, people make it from different places. And if you're in university, I always say to myself, how relevant is your education to your environment? If you think about that, there might be opportunities around there. But now the challenge is that everybody wants to be in Douala, everybody wants to be in Yaoundé. And sometimes we lose out on the opportunities that, you know, present themselves. So first thing, if you're in school in your third year, I think this is for them. Think of, I'm doing accounting, I'm doing, I don't know, management, I'm doing marketing. What am I going to do with this? I mean, how relevant is what I'm doing to my immediate environment? How can I use it? I think that's the first step. And we're talking of internships, nobody gives you food on the table for free these days, you know. So if you're going to ask for an internship, even at the internship, you know, you're making the person that's going to get you for an internship to, feel like they need you. I mean, what are you going to contribute to that company? And like I said again, sometimes we want just the big things. We want the ready-made things, and it doesn't work like that. And of course, it's not just the graduates that have an issue, the universities as well. I also preach that universities should do more around providing more relevant content. You know, I don't think that is normal for a university in 2022 to graduate students in accounting when they don't have key skills like Excel, for instance. There has to be a lab in that university. Students must be able to do some presentation as part of their, or report writing as part of their curriculum. So that when they leave university, it's not like they have to go to another university before they can operate in their market. So I think it's a challenge that all of us have to put our hands together to maybe surmount or, you know, come over.
Mr. MAZU, It was actually a pleasure having you here on the Shirlma Show, to be honest. You know, each time I actually have an interaction with you, I always learn a lot. And after this, we're going to continue the discussion, right?
Definitely, definitely.
So
thank you very much
so much for taking out time to be here with us and keep impacting. I think you're doing an amazing job. I'm sure that many people listening to you might want to actually get in contact with you. So do you have maybe any address that they can get to, or maybe any contact number that you want to leave behind?
Okay. Well, the Africa Finance Services has a website and has a Facebook page. If you just type Africa Finance Services, I'm sure you viewers can get there. Okay. But if you want a number, I mean, the number we use as a company number is 679 465353. Yeah, I think.
On this edition of the Shirlma Show, we were blessed to be in the presence of Mr. MAZU Collins, lead consultant with Africa Finance Services and a fellow with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Thank you for being with us today. Remember, we are here because you're there. Please do not forget to follow us on all our social media handles: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, The Shirlma Show. Also, check our website, www.theshirlmashow.com. Thank you for being with us today. And I've been your host, Munja Shelley.